We're here with Gavin Fernandes, the photographer, and we're taking a look at, he has two exhibitions happening simultaneously here at the Rich Mix Gallery. And the first one is Empire Line. Now, Gavin, talk us through the idea behind this collection of photographs.
For Empire Line, well, this came about through, I mean, I sat in my head for many weeks, many months actually, probably a couple of years or so, and I undertook an MA, master's degree in fashion photography at London College of Fashion, and this project came around where we had to address the title Triumph of the Middle Classes, and you could address it in any way, any internationally or whatever period. So I thought about the middle classes in India, in the British Empire, the women and the men who went over, and specifically the women who actually had to accompany the men and also live the lifestyles there, kind of restriction and also the heat and also the culture that they were involved with. So it was more about kind of how these two women of both cultures, the Indian women, the indigenous culture of India, and also the British women of the middle class, how they viewed each other's dress codes and also cultures and the way they sat or ate or drank. And it's kind of, this follows right through the series for Empire Line. The idea behind the whole concept and context of what I'm doing is to, I mean, a lot of it is quite sensitive, and obviously, you know, areas of skin are exposed where which wouldn't have been acceptable in Victorian culture in England, but in India it's kind of very common, and it's how those two things are kind of merged together. So some of these images actually look quite authentic to a point where they could be real. And maybe they were real. I mean, maybe the Indian women raided the British women's boxes when they went out, you know, and maybe the other way around. You never know, you know, like maybe things were stolen and things were merged together. Because I thought, you know, some of the British women who lived and died there in India, obviously they had to kind of become part of the culture as well. So some of them might have aspired to kind of being free of the restrictions of the clothing they were in already and free themselves up by dressing up in Indian clothing. Did you
need to do a lot of historical research for this then, or was it more going by instinct?
I think it was a bit of historical research. My origins are from Goa, so I'm more of a liberal kind of Indian, and I've grown up here in England, in the United Kingdom. So I looked up things on the internet. So I looked at the whole dress culture of Victoriana, and from early Victorian to you know, the crinolines to the corsetry and the black kind of mourning dress, etc. So I mean, I love that culture anyway. I'm very inspired by it. But I mean, I also love Indian culture too. So, you know, finding the jewellery, and we actually commissioned one jewellery designer, Scott Stephen, to make the nose chains, which kind of emphasise the whole subversive element, because it's quite kind of punk in inverted commas for what's been, you know, styled here.
It must be difficult once you've put the look together to decide on what is the shot. For example, in this picture. So, I mean, you know, talk to us a little bit, please, about where I can, you know, we've got the gloves and how did you choose to go for that as the shot?
Well, obviously, I mean, the central part of here is the belly and the belly button, and also the jewellery that's around her waist. It's provocative and quite sexual too. And subversive, because she's kind of wearing it underneath, and the top half is all Victorian, but the bottom half is actually a skirt from Gujarat. And the gloves, of course, you know, with the whole link with the Victorian culture. So this was a pre-planned idea, and I actually drew this out. So, and it was to do with focusing on this area of, you know, of the female anatomy, because again, it's like in India, it's quite exposed area. So the Victorian women would have kind of noticed this, and obviously, you know, try not to look, but looked at the same time.
Tell us about these ladies. These ladies here.
This is kind of a key image, because this is to do with the hairstylings of that time, the very centre-parted hairstyle, and also the chignon at the back, which you can't really see here, but also the plaits on the top half. It's a beauty shot basically, and it's integrating the Victorian and the indigenous culture. And here the markings are actually tattoo markings, obviously makeup in this, but I looked at the real raw culture. The people of the gypsy kind of Indian women, they would have these markings, and some of those women might have been working as servants, etc.
So that's associated with lower castes, the tattoo.
Yes. Yeah. And then obviously they're dressed in these original neck pieces from lace and chiffon, and they're real Victorian pieces. So I think the authenticity of using those, I think, highlights the whole image. And also, I think people have been talking to me about the way they look at you as well. This came as a later image. This wasn't actually planned into the shoot until maybe a week before the shoot. And basically, the untouchable in the culture of Hindu culture are an outcast. They have no caste at all. They're not actually part of society. They only deal with burying the dead or cleaning, etc. And apparently, it's said that even the shadow of an untouchable, if it falls on you, is uncleansing. So, and it still exists today. So, so this image is constructed as if this woman on the right, who's dressed as a Brahmin high caste, has a shadow who's actually on the left, but this shadow is actually touching her, on purpose, as you can see, very subtly. And she can see that she's untouchable because she hasn't got any blouse. It's just the sari on top. But then she's wearing a corset, black corset, and also this kind of shoulder piece here. This image, it kind of follows on from the beauty shot, the headshot, where you have this tattoo rendition where it's a real tattoo. But then obviously the other hand is the lace glove, which could be read as a hennaed hand from a distance, but then obviously when viewed in, it's not. The keys are actually held by the woman with the tattoo and also the Indian ring. So really the person who would hold these keys would be the governess, the owner of the huge house in India. But here it's actually the servant, which would never happen. So yeah, this image addresses kind of two cultures of like the temple dancers, the bandaleras, who dance in the temple with the bells around their ankles, and they were kind of adorned in many kind of colourful costumes, and then they would sit on the ground. I actually saw the images of this, how they sat, and they sat like this in groups, squatting on the floor, and quite provocative and showing the legs, etc. But then the top half is all high class Victorian women, maybe watching them, or these women in Victorian culture, in India, they used to sit within an enclosure of rope, so the locals can actually approach them or touch them. So it's kind of a mixture of those two, and also within the heat, etc. But the makeup, if you see, is quite raw, and it's like the makeup of the Gypsy women, the Rajasthan women.